here it goes.
And here we are, the final stretch. Oh, thank you, Jesus. And what many consider to be the best installment in the Crash Bandicoot saga. Well, at least out of those on PS1. But as always, I'll have the final say on that, thank you very much. So yeah, is Crash Bandicoot 3 as much of an evil little cretin as its older brothers? Do the sadists over at Naughty Dog finally take the opportunity to push the boat out in terms of creativity and design? And will I make it through the final circle of this digital hell with the last few lingering threads of my sanity intact? Well, let's find out. So for the third and final time, Crash Bandicoot Warped, also known as Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped in just Europe and nowhere else for some reason. What, you think gamers in America don't need a 3 to know it's the third title in the series, but us European gamers do? What you trying to say, like? To be honest, I would have thought it'd be the other way around. But anyway, like its predecessors, it was developed by Naughty Dog and published by Sony Computer Entertainment and Universal Interactive Studios in 1998. Once again, we pick up right where the last one left off, with the obliterated remains of Dr. Neo Cortex DPT's space station crashing back to Earth and hitting some kind of ancient temple, and unleashing, I guess, an evil spirit or some shit. Oh no, I've seen this movie, this can't be good. We then find our heroes hanging around outside their little hobbit home that they just somehow have now. I didn't know the Shire was in Australia. When the peace is broken by the sound heard at the end of every game publisher meeting when they decide the monetization strategy for their latest live service slot. But it's not the executives, at least according to the Witch Doctor mask, Akko or whatever. Wait. He can talk now? Like, properly? And not just his little Arubadar shit? I completely forgot about that. I always thought he was just some daft game mechanic, not an actual character. But anyway, he explains that the evil spirit is in fact his twin brother, Uka. Now there's a sitcom right there. Whom he imprisoned for thousands of years to contain his evil, but now he's free. I'm pissed. I mean, I can't imagine why. Oh, and it turns out he's actually been working with the good doctor here the whole time. So I guess that makes this guy like the Darth Sidious or the Thanos of the Crash cinematic universe, the true overarching antagonist pulling the strings from the shadows and working through minions to achieve his goals. But now that he's been released from his prison, he's just like,
fine. I'll do it myself.
But how are they going to achieve their evil plan now? I mean, the Cortex Vortex thing's been death-starred and they haven't got any crystals since we nicked off with them all in the last game, so what are they to do? Well, turns out Uka has a solution. Time travel!
Great Scott!
That's right, but it's not Doc Brown with his DeLorean. Nah, instead it's, this guy. Entropy or some shit, with his time-twisted thingamajig. Yeah, I guess that works just as well. So yeah, they're gonna travel through time to get the crystals before we got them in Crash 2, which I guess is where the warped comes from in the title. Well, we can't be having that, so Aku brings us to the same time twister thing, I think, so that we can travel through time to get the crystals first. How he knows where it is or how to use it, I have no idea. So yeah, once again, we've got a deeper story. But I guess at this bit, the writers were just like, but how are Crash and the gang gonna travel through time as well? I mean, it would be pretty unbelievable that they'd have a time machine as well. Fuck it, just make them use the same time machine. How do they know how to get to it or use it? Who cares, it's just gonna be a bunch of stupid little kids playing this shit anyway. They don't think about shit like that. Hahaha, joke's on you, motherfucker! You obviously never considered the possibility that almost 3 decades later, a 30-year-old man-child with nothing better to do will be playing back through this shit and picking apart every single solitary detail like it actually matters. Yeah, didn't think of that shit, did ya? But anyway, after all that, we finally get into the game, and big shock, the gameplay is pretty much identical to the other 2 games. Yeah, once again, we're just going through these levels, smashing crates, taking out bad guys, and collecting crystals to keep them out of Cortex and Uka's grubby hands. Well, Cortex's grubby hands. Uka doesn't have hands, but anyway. We start with the same range of abilities that we had in Crash 2. We've got the jump, the spin, the slide, the body slam, the slide jump, etc. So yeah, once again, a bit disappointing that we don't have any new abilities from the outset. But fear not, because we actually do unlock some new moves as we progress this time. Yeah, so now every time you beat a boss, you unlock a new ability. You've got things like the double jump, the stronger body slam, the tornado death spin, and the fruit bazooka. Oh Jesus Christ, Crash, where are we hiding that? I mean, you're not a girl Bandicoot, so you haven't got a pouch, so that can only mean, oh dear. But yeah, while it is cool that you unlock some new moves, they are, for the most part, just stronger versions of abilities that we already have, which is still kind of disappointing. I mean, at this point, what with it being the third game in the series, you should just be going all out and getting really creative and wacky with the things we can do. But again, they're just stuck mostly with the same bog standard stuff we've seen before. But where the basic gameplay and moveset aren't much different, we do actually have quite a few new level types. Again, we've got the basic on foot type levels, although there is more going on in them, like they're usually split into sections marked by changes in perspective, and they incorporate the chase sequences into them as well. Then we've got the underwater levels. These are simple enough, they're just some side-scrolling levels where you're swimming around Bikini Bottom with your scuba gear. You're just floating slowly along, so they're pretty much just like side-scrolling versions of the jetpack levels from Crash 2, which aren't included this time around, which is a bit disappointing since they were some of my favourite levels from that game. But while those don't return, we've still got the pig riding levels, although this time we're actually playing as Coco and riding on a cute little tiger cub. But thankfully she doesn't do the weird and slightly disconcerting eye thing before jumping on the poor creature and forcing it to do her bidding, so that's something I guess. And then we've got the racing levels, obviously a precursor to things like Crash Team Racing. They're pretty standard as well. You've got a few obstacles and power-ups and you've just got to get to the end first, cause yeah. That's how races tend to work. And when you win, you get a crystal. And just look at old Crash's face, he's like, eeeeee. So yeah, they're pretty fun, but there are a couple annoyances. First of all, why the fuck in all these racing games does the player character always have to start in last fucking place? Just why? Why do I always get sent right to the back? I mean, I know from a gameplay standpoint it's meant to increase the challenge and all, but I don't care. I'm sick of getting sent to the back. Send someone else. Why do I always have to be last? It's like school all over again. I was always sent to the back then as well. Never trusted poor old Davey to go first, did yez? And you wonder why I turned into the cynical old fuck I did. Yeah. And also, if you don't win the race and want to try again, rather than just asking you if you want another go, it throws you back to the warp room and then you've got to go back in and wait for the thing to load again. And I know that's a really minor thing, but is it also too much to ask that they just give us the option to try the race again straight away rather than kicking us out of the level and making us have to go back in? But on top of those, we've also got the water levels, where you're playing as Coco and going around on your jet ski, so that's pretty cool. And then you've also got the flying levels, where you go Red Baron to shoot down some enemy planes and zeppelins. Bit real for a Crash game, but whatever, they're fun enough. So yeah, we've got a lot more variety in the types of level this time around, which really helps the game to stand out from its predecessors, and for the most part, they're pretty good. Yeah, some work a bit better than others, but on the whole, they're not bad. The game's structured the same as the first two. You've got a bunch of warp rooms divided into 5 levels each that you can do in any order, and once you've done all 5, you move on to the next one. The only difference is that all the warp rooms are connected to a single hub, so you can quickly move from one to the next. And we've also got the same save system as before. But now for the most important question. Is there enough space for DayVeeJay this time around? Have we finally reached peak perfection in game development? It seems not. Oh well, looks like we've still got a way to go before we reach the god tier. So yeah, we're still stuck as DayVeeJay. Man, I'm gonna have to change my fucking channel name at this rate. And we still don't have any kind of autosave, so yeah, remember to save regularly. Don't be getting caught out with the rage quit now. And again, when we beat all the levels in a warp room, we get ourselves a boss fight. But thankfully, a lot of the complaints I had with the bosses in the previous 2 games have actually been addressed in this one. Firstly, the bosses this time do feel more connected with the story, since for one, it's made more clear that they're working for Dr. Neo Cortex DSW. And we also get some quick cutscenes at the start of the warp room and before the fight where the bosses taunt us beforehand, so at least they interact with us a bit outside of the actual fight, so it doesn't feel like they're just there and arbitrary to the story this time. But also, while they are still pretty simple, most of the boss fights do have a bit more to them than before. You're still mostly just avoiding their attacks and hitting them when you see an opening, but they are a little more challenging. You've got to be more strategic when going for them, and it's harder to avoid getting hit yourself. So yeah, I found the boss fights this time to be some of the most challenging and engaging and also most frustrating out of the whole trilogy. But again, we have to ask the $1,000,000 question. Is Crash 3 as ball-bustingly, ass-blastingly, skull-fuckingly hard as its big brothers? Well, I'd say it's probably about on par with Crash 2. Yeah, even though the standard platforming levels have all the same shit as in the previous games, they still don't seem quite as difficult, with a lot of the challenge and frustration this time around actually coming from the new level types instead. But first, let's talk about the controls, and did they do something between this and Crash 2? It's just that the controls in this one don't feel quite as tight or precise as in the previous game. They seem lighter and more sensitive, so it's a bit harder to move with precision, and I didn't feel like I had as much control when jumping and landing and shit, so that did make things a bit harder, especially at bits where there's hazards that you have to move quickly to avoid. But as for the new levels, let's first take a deeper look at the races. Yeah, even though they are simple, they also have to be some of the most unforgiving parts of the whole game. No joke, in order to come in first, you have to get through the entire thing without hitting a single obstacle or driving off the road or anything. I mean it, if you hit something you might as well just quit and start again cause there just isn't enough time to catch up to the fuckers all the way out in front. The way the races are set up, every racer has their own predetermined place and the only way to get past them all is again to get through without hitting anything or coming to a stop, which is made worse by the fact that the controls here are even harder to get the hang of. Like the races themselves, they're simple enough. You just use the stick or D-pad to steer and hold down X to speed up and let go to slow down. But just like the on-foot controls, they're pretty sensitive, so it doesn't take long to gain speed, which you need to be careful with when going around bends since you don't have to be going that fast to drive off the road, and it can take a while to get back on, to the point where, once again, you might as well just quit and start again. The physics are pretty sensitive as well, meaning that even just lightly clipping something like one of the other races is enough to send you spinning out of control and off the road. And in addition to all that, the other competitors move really fast as well, so while also avoiding all the obstacles in your way, you've got to hit pretty much all the speed boosters as well, which makes it even harder to control your speed. So yeah, these bits could be a real bitch. Then there's the underwater levels, which as I've already said are similar to the jetpack levels in Crash 2, which as you'll probably guess means that the controls here can take a bit getting used to as well, since obviously because you're going around in water they're just a lot slower and floatier, so it's harder to control yourself and where you're going. So as you're swimming along, it's easier to go floating into the paths of enemies or hazards like the nitro crates, which are then also harder to get away from. And then you get this vehicle thing that lets you go faster and blow shit up with torpedoes, so that's pretty cool. But the trade-off is it's even harder to control, cause yeah, you're going faster, so it's even easier to accidentally touch an enemy and die. So yeah, these levels can be annoying, but since they're underwater I can give them a pass since that's pretty much what you'd expect them to be like, just like the Zero G in Crash 2. Then there's Coco's jet ski levels, which on the whole weren't too bad. But again, the controls can be a bit tricky since you move pretty fast and they're quite sensitive, so you've got to be extra careful to avoid all the enemies and hazards around you, especially since you don't have any kind of attack, so there's nothing you can do about the enemies except just avoid them. And then there's the plane levels. These weren't all that bad either, but they could still be annoying. The worst thing about these is that while you're trying to blow up these blimps and what have you, you've also got enemy planes trying to shoot you down, and when they open up on you, it doesn't take long for them to drop your health, and they zip around so fast that it can be hard to hit them before they hit you, especially since you need to be close to them to do so. And a lot of the time you'll be so focused on blowing up the blimps that you might not be watching your health bar, so you don't realise that your health's low until you've been blown out of the fucking sky. So yeah, like its predecessors, this one does have its fair share of annoying shit, but I still don't think it's quite as hard as Crash 2, and nowhere near as bad as Crash 1, probably cause the save system's not fucked up like it was in that game, which I'm still not over, and I never will be. I'll be pushing up fucking daisies before I forgive that shit. What the fuck were they thinking? How did anyone think that shit was a good fucking idea? Seriously, whoever did should have been tied to a tree and flogged with a fucking N64 controller until he screamed for his mother. And yeah, with that out of the way, let's move on to the presentation side. The graphics and art style are pretty much the same as before, again what with it being just a year since the last title, but there have been some more small improvements. The environments, lighting effects and character models all look slightly more detailed, and a lot of the levels are also more expansive with more going on in the background, which helps make them feel a bit more alive. The improvements are harder to notice between this and Crash 2, but you can really see the difference when you compare it to Crash 1. And also, as with similar games, the time travel theme does mean that the levels have a bit more personality than in the previous games. You've got a few different periods and locations like the prehistoric times, the pirate years, the medieval period, Arabia, ancient China and Egypt. Oh, don't you talk to me about ancient fucking Egypt. And also the future. And in keeping with the subject of time travel, the soundtrack also reflects the various time periods featured. It's decent enough and fits well with the levels and gameplay, although I don't think it's quite as good or memorable as that of the previous game, which I just felt had a bit more personality to it. The voice acting's fine, as you'd expect, with again the standout performance coming from Clancy Brown as not only Dr. Neo Cortex, DFA, but also the evil overlord Uka Uka, and once again he gives his all to the character to create another memorable villain of the PS1 era. And there's one other thing I wanted to discuss which I haven't really touched on so far in this trilogy of videos, and that's the appeal of Crash himself. I mean, in all honesty, the Crash games, the original 3 at least, despite being fun and challenging, are pretty standard fare among the 3D platformers of the time. They don't really do anything original or innovative, and much of the series' appeal, I think, comes more from its personality than gameplay, and much of that's down to Crash himself, who just comes across as such an endearing and lovable protagonist, all without saying a single word. He just has this kind of playful innocence and humour despite all the danger and chaos going on around him, which is reflected in his faces, mannerisms and idle animations. It's clear that a lot of time and effort went into creating a main character that was as fun and unique as possible, and I'm fairly confident in saying that if Crash wasn't as well designed or thought out, the series wouldn't be remembered anywhere near as fondly as it is today. So anyway, once you've got all the crystals, it's time to take on Pinky and the Brain here. But this time it's a tag team, with you fighting Cortex while your masked friend takes on his twin brother. And this was the most annoying fight out of the whole game, cause while avoiding Cortex's attacks, you've also got to stay out the way of these fuckers as well, cause if they hit you then yeah, you get the picture by now. And then when the good doctor's shield comes down, you just give him a whack upside the head and knock him off his glider thing, and then hit him again and knock him down the hole. And don't forget to hit him the second time, otherwise you won't do any damage, and the fight's just gonna go on for even longer. And when you finally get through that shit, congratulations, you beat the game. But
It's not over, Bandicoot. There are still the gems. We still have a chance to triumph.
yep, as usual, we don't get the full ending unless we get 100%, which in order to do, we have to, get the gems. Although this time, despite what Uka Uka says, there's really no story-related reason for doing so. You get the gems the same way as before. You've got the ones for smashing all the crates in a level, the ones for beating the death routes, the coloured gems which unlock alternate routes which also contain gems, meaning you've got to go back and forth between levels you've already done to get stuff you've missed, and naturally these bits are the most rage-inducing parts of the whole fucking game. Although if you've unlocked all the extra abilities beforehand, it does make them a lot easier. Or you think you can stop me, motherfucker? Well, why don't you just say hello to my little friend? But that's not all, because this time we also have the relics. And how do we get those? Well, that brings us to a new feature of Crash 3. Time Trial Mode. What's that? Well, exactly what it sounds like. See, when you enter a level you've already beaten, you'll now find this little clock doohickey. You touch that and the time trial starts, and then you just have to make it to the end in time to pass. You do that and you get a relic. So yeah, that's a cool new feature. Adds replay value and a new dimension to gameplay. Some of the boxes will stop the clock for a couple seconds when you smash them, and getting killed in time trial mode doesn't cost any lives, so that's good. But that doesn't mean these bits aren't annoying as fuck as well, cause oh, they most definitely are, like just about everything else in these vexatious fucking games. So yeah, since now you've got to beat these levels within a certain time limit, naturally you're going to be trying to get through them as fast as possible. So now you don't have time to slow down and take the bits slow and carefully what need to be taken slow and carefully. You pretty much just have to throw all caution to the wind and hope that your platforming skills and reflexes are as sharp as can be. Or just do it enough times that you pretty much memorize the whole thing so you know where everything is. When to move, when to wait, where to jump. Yeah, I mostly ended up going with option B. But on top of that, just because of its very nature, all checkpoints are eliminated, meaning you've got to get through each level without dying a single time, because they just can't let go of that shit, can they? But anyway, you need to get the relic from each level to get 100%. And is that it? Am I done? Haha, nope, there's more. So you've beaten all the levels within the time limit, acquired yourself all the relics, well done, good for you, give yourself a pat on the back. But no, that's not good enough, because you've also got the fucking gold and platinum relics and only they count towards 100%, so just getting through the time trials once isn't enough, you've got to do it even faster, for fuck's sake man, why? So yeah, you get all that shit, you face Cortex and Uka Uka again if you already did after getting the crystals, not that it matters, the fight's just the same, and there you go, you won. The Time Twister collapses or whatever, Cortex and his minions get turned into annoying little crotch goblins, and they all live happily ever after. And yeah, job done. So that was Crash Bandicoot Warped. And in conclusion, is it the best of the original Crash games? I don't fucking know. I mean, it's good, it's fun, it's challenging, it's as annoying as ever. It's definitely better than Crash 1, but is it better than Crash 2? I'd say it's about on par. It does address a lot of the complaints I had with that game, and the gameplay is more varied, what with the new level types and abilities, even though they are a little bit hit and miss. But I just found Crash 2 to be a slightly more enjoyable experience. I don't know, it just felt a bit more cohesive in the way it was designed and structured. Like, even though I appreciate the new types of level in Crash 3, they kind of make the game feel a little bit disjointed. It's difficult to describe. But despite that, Crash 3 is still very much a decent game that balances fun and challenge pretty well. It looks good, it's got the same level of personality and zany sense of humour, and overall, it's a fitting conclusion to the original trilogy. And again, if you haven't given it a spin, then I recommend you do so. But of course, there's also an elephant in the room that I've chosen not to address until now, and that is, well, since the Insane Trilogy is a thing, is there really any reason to go back to the originals? I mean, why would I want to play this old shite when I can relive my childhood memories and trauma in gorgeous HD with extra quality of life updates? Like for instance, they fixed the stupid fucked up save system in the original, finally. I mean, someone had to do it, not that it should have needed fixing in the first place, but anyway. And now all 3 games in the collection also have time trial mode, just to add a whole new way for you to torture yourself. So yeah, is there any reason to go back to the originals other than for the nostalgia kick? Well, maybe, considering there are some other differences between the original trilogy and the remake. Namely, would you believe that the remakes are even harder?
What?
Oh yes, see, while the fine folks over at Vicarious Visions intended for the remakes to have the same level of challenge as the originals, some changes in the physics and collision systems mean that a greater level of precision is required than before. And oh, you better believe that! Yeah, I mean, I already noticed a difference the first time I played them, but I also gave them another go while I've been doing these reviews, and no lie, there were plenty bits that I had no trouble with in the originals that were now just an absolute fucking ball ache in the remake, especially in the first game. Yeah, you don't want to know how close my lovely and expensive DualSense controller came to being embedded in the screen of my also lovely and expensive smart TV. But despite that, the improvements that I already mentioned do mean I can pretty much give it a pass. I mean, if you're just looking to relive some memories and don't mind a little extra challenge, I'd say just stick with the remakes. But if you want the pure unaltered experience, flaws and all, then by all means go with the originals, they're still enjoyable enough. So yeah, that's Crash Bandicoot on PS1. But of course, with an IP and character as popular as old Crash, you can bet your left nut that wouldn't be the end of the line for the marvellous marsupial, and you'd be correct. And just as well, I mean, why would you bet one of your own testicles? What are you, a maniac? But yeah, after Crash 3, Naughty Dog would give us one more game in the form of Crash Team Racing, obviously meant to be Sony's answer to Nintendo's Mario Kart, before moving on to making games about dudes with mushrooms growing out of their heads, and then remaking them just a few years later because And development of future Crash games on just about every platform you can think of fell on the likes of Traveller's Tales, Radical Entertainment, Eurocom, etc. And full disclosure, I never played a single one of them, although from what I've heard it seems they never enjoyed the same level of praise as the originals. So yeah, we might give them a look at some point, but for now, I've had more than enough Crash for one day, or week, or month, or hell, even a fucking year. So yeah, I'm done. For now at least. Well, there you go, I made it, and yeah, I think my mental state is more or less intact. I mean, I was trying to finger paint a wall-sized replica of Gustav Klimt's The Kiss with my own shit the other day, but anyway, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, then leave a like. If you didn't, then tell me to go fuck myself. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you enjoy my content and have yet to subscribe, I will be extremely grateful if you would do so. And as always, thank you so much to everyone who already has. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.